While Sri Lanka keeps maneuvering high tides, there's always been those who have taken the negatives and transformed them into positives. They've found their own space, seen the gaps, and innovated, looking at how opportunities can be exploited. Today, we hear two such inspirational stories. Two entrepreneurs who have put on their innovation caps and pushed the envelope to survive and thrive. These are not ordinary stories.
මම තරෙන්දිය දිරිසූරිය. ව්‍යවසායිකාවක් විදිහට මගේ ව්‍යාපාරය 2018 වර්ෂයේ ඇඟලුම් ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨ ඉනුරු කලෙක්ෂන් කියන විදිහට මම මගේ ව්‍යාපාරය පටන් ගත්තා. සේවිකාවන් 5 දෙනෙක්කින් තිබිච්ච මගේ ව්‍යාපාරය ලංකාවේ තියෙන ප්‍රධාන පෙළේ ආයතන වලට මගේ ඇඟලුම් දෙන්න මගේ ඇඳුම් වල තියෙන ක්වොලිටි එකට මට පුළුවන්කම හම්බුණා. ඒ වගේම මට ඕන කරලා තිබ්බා බතික් වලින් ලොකු බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් එකක් ලංකාවට ගේන්න. ඒ බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් එක හදාගන්න ඒකට ඕන පසුබිම මම හදාගෙන ඉන්නකොට ලංකාවේ පළවෙනි ලොක්ඩවුන් එකට අපිට මුහුණ දෙන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. ඒ පළවෙනි ලොක්ඩවුන් එක මට ආශිර්වාදයක් විදිහට මම අරගෙන ඒ ලොක්ඩවුන් එකෙන් අපිට පුළුවන් වුණා අපේ බතික් වලට ඕන සෑම ට්‍රේනින් එකක්ම ලබා ගන්න ඒ හම්බෙච්ච පීරියඩ් එකේ. අපි ඒක කන්නරයක් විදිහට අරගෙන ලොක්ඩවුන් එක ඉවර වුණාම මගේම කියලා බතික් ෆැක්ටරි එකක් ළමයි 5 දෙනෙක්ගෙන් පටන් ගන්න මට පුළුවන්කම හම්බුණා. ඒ පටන් ගැම්ම දෙවනි ලොක්ඩවුන් එකත් එක්ක එනකොට ලංකාවට මේන් සප්ලයි කෙනෙක් විදිහට බතික් සප්ලයි කරන්න පුළුවන් තත්වයකට මට මගේ බතික් ෆැක්ටරි එක ගේන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. ඒත් එක්කම ILO කියන ආයතනයේ මංගාවට ඇවිල්ලා අපිට ට්‍රේනින් ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් වලට ලොකු උදව්වක් දුන්නා. 5 දෙනාගෙන් පටන් ගත්ත මගේ මේ ව්‍යාපාරය ළමයි 65ක් වෙනකන් මට ගෙනිය ගන්න මට මේ සුළු කාලෙදී මට හැකියාව හම්බුණා. ඒ වගේම අලුත් බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් එකක් ලංකාවේ තියෙන බතික් වලට ලොකු මාකට් එකක් අපිට එක්ස්පෝර්ට් කරන්න පුළුවන් තත්වයකට ගේන්න අපිට පුළුවන්කම හම්බුණා. මේ ඉකොනොමික් ක්‍රයිසිස් එකත් එක්කලම අපි අමුද්‍රව්‍ය වල ලොකු අපහසුතාවයකට පත් වුණා. ඒකටත් අපි පිළියමක් විදිහට ලංකාවේ ඇතුළෙම තියෙන අමුද්‍රව්‍ය භාවිතා කරලා ඒව පරීක්ෂා කරලා ඒව වලට කරන්න පුළුවන් හැම ටෙස්ට් එකක්ම කරලා ඒ ද්‍රව්‍ය භාවිතා කරලා අපිට පුළුවන් වුණා එක්ස්පෝර්ට් කරන්න බතික් වලින් හොඳ බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් එකක් හදන්න. අපි ඒකත් අපිට ඇචීව් කරගන්න පුළුවන් වුණා ලංකාවෙන් එක්ස්පෝර්ට් කරන්න කවදාවත් දුන්නේ නැති බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් එකක් විදිහට යවා ගන්න. ඊට අමතරව අපි දැන් ගම්පහ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ මේක කරගෙන යන ගමන් අපිට පුළුවන් වුණා ගම්පහ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයෙන් එළියට ගිහිල්ලා අම්පාර දිගන වගේ ප්‍රදේශවල මේක ව්‍යාප්ත කරලා දැන් අපේ ඒවල 100කට ප්‍රමාණයක් වැඩ කරගෙන යනවා. ඒ වගේම එක්ස්පෝර්ට් කරන්න අපිට අයර්ලන්තය, නෙදර්ලන්ඩ්, UK, ජපාන්, ජර්මන්, නිව්සීලන්ඩ්, ඩුබයි යන රටවල් වලට අපිට එක්ස්පෝර්ට් කරන්න පුළුවන් කමක් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා මේ බතික් නිර්මාණ. තිබ්බ කඩාවැටීම් පසුබෑම් හැම දෙයකටම මුහුණ දීලා අපිට පුළුවන් වුණා මේ හැම බාධාවකින්ම ඉස්සරහට ගිහිල්ලා කාන්තා ව්‍යවසායිකාවක් විදිහට අපිට තවත් සේවකයෝ විශාල සංඛ්‍යාවකට උදව් කරලා අපේ ව්‍යාපාරය ගොඩනගන්න. ඒ වගේම ලංකාවට විදේශ විනිමය ගේන්න අපිට පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
She began her entrepreneurial venture with just 5. It is now expanded to 65 with training given by the ILO. But it was not an easy journey. During COVID, everything stopped. But during the first lockdown, she learned all by herself the art of batik. She started doing her own, then she employed another 5 and began doing a very different kind of unique style of batik. She then got the training for 60 more people and then began a batik establishment that is now totally geared towards exports. However, with the import ban, what did happen was that she could not find fabric to do her batik. Enterprising as she is, she went to most of the factories that had outlets and managed to get the cast off fabric and began working on different types of products and a new brand. And these products she began exporting. So with any particular type of fabric, it was just a one-off unique design. Today, she exports to the Netherlands, to Ireland, to Germany, to Australia, and to various other places, including Dubai, and has also expanded her business or her manufacturing establishments to Ampara, Digana, and Ashes in Gampaha. That's Tarindi's story.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. My story is a little bit different. I was born in Colombo. At the age of 3 months, I was moved out of the country and was raised entirely outside of Sri Lanka, educated outside of Sri Lanka, and exposed to the world. Traveled to over 60 countries, and by the time the pandemic hit, I decided this is the perfect cover, the perfect opportunity to move to the island that I always found was paradise. Against all odds and against any motivation, I only faced discouragement from people in the country saying, "Don't come back, you're crazy." I said, well, you know what, the whole world is at a standstill, so this couldn't be a better time, because pretty much every country was made more or less equal with the COVID lockdowns. When I moved to Sri Lanka in December 2020, I had completed nearly a decade of work in real estate, private equity, and institutional investment funds, developing hotels for some award-winning brands in Europe, covering over 10 markets across the continent. With that skill set, I saw tremendous opportunity in the tourism and hospitality space in Sri Lanka, and I found myself consulting or advising people in the country. And while discovering the country or rediscovering the country during lockdowns in 2021, I just was exploring myself and exploring the island where there were no tourists. And I realized the biggest opportunity Sri Lanka has and the tourism sector has is actually to fix all the problems and not market and promote the destination. So the most common calls I would get were, "Oh, I have a property. Can you help me market it to your contacts around the world?" Or, "Can you help me sell it?" And then I realized there's actually so many other challenges which require attention. And so with the skill set and exposure that I had internationally, I am now advising private sector and public sector stakeholders as a solopreneur, if you like, or an independent consultant. And I pull together all my projects across the asset life cycle. So that's from greenfield sites, brownfield sites, new investments, conversions, redevelopments, as well as tourism strategy and planning for projects like the Pico Trail or similar. I pull in resources from across the country, different technical experts, sustainability consultants, architects, suppliers who work with nature-based solutions, and I create teams on an individual project basis that highlight the talent that Sri Lanka has and focus on regenerating the destination. Some of the challenges that I face in my work from a solopreneur perspective is the lack of value of education, experience, and exposure globally. They expect things for free a lot in this country. Specializations and focus, finding mentorship, long-term planning, and receiving value perception from stakeholders in what tourism advisory and strategy is. So that's been a big barrier. And then from a macro scale in Sri Lanka, obviously it's investor confidence and lack of consistency, policy and implementation, lack thereof, regulation, rule of law completely absent, de-risking a very risky operating environment. I don't know if I should hire, I don't know if I should invest in scaling up a team and technology because we cannot really see far into the future in this country. And the short-term mindset are some of the biggest challenges I've faced as a solopreneur. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It need not be reiterated that Sri Lanka has been through multiple crises, and some of the most affected have been the micro and small and medium entrepreneurs. We may not realize it, but these are the wheels of the cogs of the wheels that keep the economy turning. The pandemic was not selective. It took these entrepreneurs down, and the economy failing was not selective either. It took the balance of those entrepreneurs down. But it also placed a light at the end of the tunnel for those who wanted to follow it. Two great examples is what we heard today. Proprietor of Inuru Batik, Tharindi Idrisurya, and founder of Retrace Hospitality, Chalana Pereira, thank you for your inspiration and also for the lessons learned and resilience earned. Today, we launch a groundbreaking report on the impact that these multiple crises have had on Sri Lanka's MSMEs. Analyzed across 10 districts and over 550 MSMEs, at least 80% of businesses in this sector were impacted, with the most severe being tourism, manufacturing, construction, transport, storage, and retail. The International Labour Organization warmly welcomes each of you to this launch, primarily because the lessons learned are invaluable, the insights gained stimulating, and recovery opportunities strategized. And like you heard from both Chalana and Tarini, there's always a way to move forward. I'd like to invite the Country Director for Sri Lanka and the Maldives of the International Labour Organization, Simran Singh, to address you now.
Good evening. Honourable Minister Manusha Nanyakara of Labour and Foreign Employment, Secretary Vimala Vera, also the Ministry of Labour and Foreign Employment, workers' representatives, employers' representatives, private sector representatives, my fellow UN country team colleagues that are here, representatives of diplomatic missions, and the list goes on and on in terms of people that are here. I want to say at the very beginning that you've been selectively chosen to be here. This is because what we're doing today is not just a launch of a report. We can do report on report, and I must say, I'm very proud of ILO's excellence in providing the kind of evidence base needed to inform policy and practice. So this is a very good report, and I'm not biased in that regard. But more importantly is what happens next. That this actual report is not something that decorates the shelves, but actually inspires action, which is why, again, you're all invited here. Because this task of overcoming year on year on year on year, in fact, decades of crises and failures when it comes to very many things related to the labor market functioning efficiently and effectively to have that kind of ecosystem needed, has paid a price. And to be able to extricate ourselves and get out of this, we need a very clear way forward, and not one that's alone, not one that is alone the job of ILO or the Ministry of Labor. We need workers, organizations, we need employers, we need the diplomatic friends of Sri Lanka, we need, of course, the private sector, because you are very much the engines of growth. We need academia, who can keep giving us that evidence base that we need to move forward. We need monetary policies. We need our multilateral institutions. I'm very glad here we have good representation from the multilateral institutions that you see, many of you see quite frequently. You know, the ADBs, the World Banks, the IMFs, they're here with us. So I'm not going to talk for very much longer, but just to say that this is really a very important piece of work that we began some time ago, in fact, and has come to a culmination, but this is not going to be the end of where it goes. This is just the start. And I hope that by the end of this evening, which is a short evening, you will find that inspiration, you will find that motivation, and you will feel very informed about how you can play a role yourselves in moving forward and seeing how we can help our beautiful country, Sri Lanka, revitalize, and do really well through very difficult times for not just the economy, but its people. And this is very important because as we talk about the dollars and cents and the rupees and the debts and relief packages and everything, we consistently hear about funds. We don't hear the stories about the people, especially the people locally that are so much potential, offer so much potential for helping build back the country. And the micro, medium, small enterprise sector is really a huge contribution and a huge ticket item in terms of building back the country in a much brighter way, be it in the tourism sector, be it in the batik sector, you name it. There's so much opportunity that can be actually harnessed locally, and to move away from this debt mentality or constant indebtedness mentality as well is very important. So I hope you find that inspiration. I will welcome you again very much to this, and after me, I will a video will be showing to give you all a glimpse of what the micro, small, medium enterprise sector represents for the country and its potential before we move on to the proceedings. So thank you very much for being here and all your partnership with the ILO and with yourselves. And thank you, Honorable Minister, for gracing this occasion and being there, showing your leadership as well and interest and commitment in this domain. Thank you.
The backbone and success of a nation stands on the valued contribution of its women and men. Sri Lanka's developing economy is built on the hard work and dedication of its micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs. MSMEs employ a majority of Sri Lanka's workers and help promote specialized skills that support economic development and community well-being. Why are MSMEs so vital to Sri Lanka's growing economy? As of 2023, micro, small and medium-sized enterprises have contributed to 55% of Sri Lanka's GDP, account for 75% of the country's labor force. 29% of Sri Lanka's MSMEs are owned by women. MSMEs are highly concentrated in urban and peri-urban areas. In the wake of multiple crises, Sri Lanka saw a severe economic downturn in 2022. Its impacts placing considerable pressure on businesses and workers. Many small businesses shut down. Many employed coping strategies that have helped them survive through these difficult times. A few even expanded. Understanding a problem is essential to build effective solutions. ILO's study on MSMEs sheds light on what needs to happen for Sri Lankan MSME resilience, recovery and growth. Growth that is human-centered, sustainable and inclusive.
Thank you to Ms. Singh for the welcome address. And also, as she mentioned, we all talk about inflation, about depreciation, about dollars, about debt, and how we restructure debt, how we need reform. But there's one element that everyone's forgotten, the peopleness of the problem. And that's what we are highlighting today. I would like to invite Professor Sunil Chandrasiri, the co-author of the study, now to present the findings of the study.
Good evening, Honorable Minister, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to make a very short presentation on salient findings of the survey. Story is very simple and straightforward. The title, as you could see it here, it's the multiple impact of the multi-crisis on Sri Lanka's micro, small and medium-scale enterprises. This is based on 3 sample surveys. Both 2 sample surveys are cross-sectional. First one is surviving MSMEs over 500 sample size. Also, we surveyed about 50 MSMEs who have gone out of the business. Other one is key informant interviews, informants, about 50 people engaged in MSME development work, promoting engaged in public, private and non-government sector organizations. The main purpose was to assess the impact of this multi-crisis on MSMEs. And number 2 is that we also wanted to find out to what extent they try to face these challenges or coping mechanisms. Then after that, the most important part is that what are the constraining factors which really affect their business recovery. These are the 3 objectives. Next slide is the key challenges. As you would notice it here, we came up with a list of key challenges. But the most important one is here. As you would see, the high cost of interest, that is the cost of interest, plus they are unable to repay bank loans. That became repeatedly as the number 1 constraint. Then another one is cost of raw material and also scarcity of raw material because of the trade policy factors. The other third one is that it is obvious that fuel crisis, high prices, power cuts, and also electricity tariffs, etc. These three factors came most important, dominant constraints affecting the business recovery of business sector enterprise, MSME sector enterprises. Let's move on. The other one is that as I said, the key one of the key objectives is to assess the impact of this multi-crisis on MSMEs. We applied multiple criteria, but if you read the literature, there is hardly any evidence on loss of human capital, skills development work. So we just picked up one criteria. So what you notice here is that the impact of multiple crises on training and development, or as we call it in the literature, human capital development. We measured it in terms of, as you would see, on-the-job training, the in-house training, external training, and e-learning. Also in terms of micro, small, medium-scale enterprises. I'll take the total impact on MSMEs. If you look at the online on-the-job training, the impact is a drop of 6%. In terms of the in-house training, the drop in human capital development in terms of in-house training, it is 41% drop. In terms of external training, it was 67%, and e-learning highest level minus 73%. This is the impact on skills development. The other aspect is that the multi-crisis impact in terms of employment. There again, we have very interesting set of data. I just picked up one piece of information, that is the impact of cost of living and cost of living on the operation of MSMEs. As you would notice it here, all the employers, they said that they are not in a position to offer a decent salary to the workers because they are in line with the cost of increasing cost of living, because they don't have that much of income to pay decent salaries to their workers. As a result, there is a loss of the human capital in their organizations. In addition, this is even more interesting because we all talk about migration. What we notice in this study is that also these MSME owners said that they lose both skilled and unskilled workers due to in-migration and out-migration. So that has also affected very seriously over the operation of MSME sector enterprises. Then ladies and gentlemen, at the very outset, we listened to a nice story, Batik industry story, very successful story. So this slide confirms what she said at the very outset. So given all these devastating implications, we asked one simple question. We asked them whether there's a risk of business closure. So the responses are summarized here. Micro-level enterprises, as you would notice it here, about 55% of micro-level enterprises, despite all these challenges, they said there is no risk of business closure immediately. Then we asked about the small-scale enterprises. There again, as you would see, despite all these challenges, 69% of people said, no, there is no risk. They are ready to go through this, face these challenges. And Honorable Minister, this is even more interesting. Medium-scale enterprises who employ more people, who use technology, who are engaged in the exporting, etc., who are very, very important for us. And they say 75% of people say, no problem. You see, so therefore, this is a very positive sign, very good thing. And we should definitely take this like the first story we heard from the at the outset. All the entire MSME sector, they are more than, but they are ready to go through this crisis period and really come out of this. So therefore, all the stakeholders have a common responsibility to get together and provide whatever support we could provide. Let's move on. Then we asked the coping strategies because we also because we were very keen in how, to what extent they managed to run their businesses. There again, as you would notice it here, we had a long list. We summarized few items only. So the number one is that introduce the flexible working practices. So there again you would see that is there again there is one important factor. This table gives you this chart gives you the responses in terms of male-owned and female-owned enterprises. Honorable Minister, you would notice it here. Flexible working practices, about 45% of female-owned enterprises, they started it, as opposed to their male counterpart, which is about 33%. Then again, use of ICT on business operations. There again, you would see female entrepreneurs. You see, it is about closer to 45%. Male counterparts is about 35%. So things like that. So then you can read the list. There again, these items very clearly demonstrate the MSME sector business entrepreneurs, their commitment, their ability to respond to this crisis situation, and their agility to face up these challenges and make necessary arrangements. In addition, what is even more interesting is that in this country we talk about low female labor force participation, but if you look at the crisis situation, how the MSME owners in terms of gender, male and female business owners seem to be way ahead as against their male counterparts. That is very obvious. So you can just see it from these statistics. Then the other one is the some more positive impacts of multicultural crisis on MSMEs. There again, there are some very interesting findings you could see here again. The last one is that the first thing what they did was that the immediate response was cut down costs and also try their best to minimize waste. That's number one. Then number two is improved customer services. In addition, they identified the new customers, things of that nature. There again, you would see that they have tried various business strategies to go through this challenging situation and survive in business. There, of course, this table gives you the responses in terms of medium, small, and micro level enterprises. Then the digitalization of business activities. If you read the literature, there are tons and tons of material on digitalization of business activities, especially during crisis situation. We wanted to investigate this aspect mainly because the government has identified digitalization as one of the development pillars or economic recovery strategies. So here again, we picked up several items. One of the key items was that the use of social media for business development activities. There again, it is very interesting to see that among female-owned business enterprises, it is 49% as opposed to 39% among male-owned enterprises. That is use of social media to promote business sector activities. Then the other one is that similarly there are a few other variables. For example, last one is online marketing and communication. Honorable Minister, this is advertising area. There again, see the female entrepreneurs, 33 as opposed to 20 among male business owners. What is important in this diagram is that in addition to their positive response, if you really look at it, actually, if you compare with our Asian counterparts and other countries, their digitalization positive response is much higher than us. So therefore, we are in fact compared to global standards, our neighboring countries, we are a little bit behind. So this is an area where, as the government has pointed it out, definitely we need to invest some money, and that would definitely pay very high dividends, including the micro, small and medium scale enterprises, plus the entire economy at large. Then having covered all these things, we also picked up one table, that is what are the key constraints that really affect the business survival of these enterprises. Here what you notice is that there is, if you read the newspapers, if you listen to the TV news, everybody is talking about the cost of utility services. It is being structured very nicely, very cleanly in this survey. Both survivors and non-survivors. I said at the very outset, we covered 500 business survivors and also 50 enterprises who have gone out of business. All those people completely endorse that cost of utility services, 79%, the non-survivors, 68%. Tax rates, we keep complaining about it. It is a major thing. But then again, the fact of the matter is that these business enterprises, 78% say that it is too much. And also the non-survivors, 68. Macroeconomic uncertainty, that has also become a key issue. We felt that these are very important findings, because at the end we need to work out some solutions and strategies for that purpose. This is very important. Economic uncertainty, 76%, 72%. Tax administration, it is not only the tax rates, tax administration has also become a major constraint because these institutions are well recognized for their gross inefficiency. It is being captured here in this survey. If these people say it is, we need to accept it. So there is so. Then cost of financing, there again, it is true that there has been a lot of requests coming from the central bank and other financial authorities. But if you ask the beneficiaries, target beneficiaries, they say that it is too high. They are not being, they don't really get any benefit out of it. So that is a factor which deserves to be addressed more rigorously. Then policy uncertainty, etc. Let's move on. Having covered the impact, then there are positive responses and constraints. I think we are ready to move on to the final stage of the presentation. That is what are the policy business strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, what we did here was that as Savitri mentioned, also country director mentioned, the inflation, cost of interest, these are macroeconomic factors. These macroeconomic aggregates are so powerful and they affect the entire economy, including micro and small scale enterprises. In fact, their macroeconomic impact on MSM is very severe. And therefore, when you work out economic business recovery strategies, we need to look at take the entire economy as a whole and take a very comprehensive, complete approach. For that purpose, what we did was we thought the best way to approach this would be to pick up three main pillars, three major themes to formulate policy interventions. Number one is creating jobs. Number two is skills development work. Number three is, of course, there are institutions, and we noticed that high taxes, utility bill sector. This is what we call institutional failures, which requires reform. So the solutions are very simple. We need only three areas to concentrate: job creation, skills development, institutional reform. Then the last slide, what we did was, based on these three major themes, we came up with 12 different policy interventions. I will just pick up one just to save time. Skills development work. There again, there are some high growth sectors. For example, tourism. It is the high growth sector. The second quarter of this year, growth was 25%, value-added growth. So we need to start skills development work on sector-specific basis. So entrepreneurship development, improving digital competencies. This is extremely important. Similarly, if you look at the creating jobs, there again the increased female participation, address supply side solutions, etc. We have spelled out these things in detail. Finally, the regulatory reform. There again, there are 4 items, but let me emphasize again what is really important is that the institutional reform, particularly with respect to energy sector, Honorable Minister, that is desperately needed. Because their inefficiency has become a major burden on small, micro, and medium scale enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, with this brief introduction, let me conclude. Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we move into a little bit of a panel discussion just to find out a little more about the study that was published. I would like to invite Professor Sunil Chandrasiri, who gave you a little bit of insight earlier, to make his way up as part of the panel. The Head of Employment Strategies Unit of the ILO Geneva, Dr. Sherverick, Dr. Ramani Gunathilaka, who also co-authored the study. And we'd like to have the three of you on stage with me, just to have a little bit of a discussion. So let me start off with you, Sher. What is the global perspective like of MSMEs and why Sri Lanka?
Well, thank you very much. And now we're competing with the rain, so I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So just firstly on the global perspective, now clearly the world has gone through multiple crises in the last couple of years. We had the COVID-19 pandemic. We had the cost of living crisis that hit developing countries hard. And now we're still facing considerable uncertainty, which is threatening economies around the world. Let me just state there that when we look at what happened there, and from an ILO perspective, we saw that, of course, certain groups and sectors were hit much harder, and in those including the micro, small and medium enterprises. You also can see it from a gender perspective in terms of youth as well. And a second point I want to add is that what we've also seen around the world is that the recovery since 2021 and particularly over the last year and this year has been characterized by considerable divergence. We've seen much stronger recoveries in rich countries, and this is due to the sort of policy responses they've had, and the types of investment and fiscal space they've been able to use to promote that. So taking that global perspective, and obviously, why Sri Lanka, why these issues here, I think already a very good justification has already been made. I mean, the name starts with micro, but clearly this group has macro importance in terms of the economy, but most importantly in terms of the labour market. So if we are to see a strong and inclusive labour market recovery, these SME, small and medium enterprises play an absolute critical role. So if you also saw Professor Chandra Siri's brief presentation on the policy areas, they also try to juxtapose those issues within this broader, comprehensive type of framework, which is also something that at the ILO we promote around the world, working on these type of issues in crisis situations.
So, Dr. Gunathilaka, in that backdrop, what was we did see Professor Chandrasiri give us a brief, but what was the impact that the crisis had on employment, and what are the constraints that were there for the survival of these MSMEs?
Thank you, Savitri. I think I should first explain. If you take our samples, 82% were micro enterprises, around 8 were small and 10 medium. The micro enterprises in our sample accounted for about a quarter of all employment of the firms in the sample. Now, as the crisis hit, now remember we are looking at enterprises which survived the crisis. So when you look at the micro enterprises which survived the crisis, they and the other size categories, they all suffered a decline in employment of about 20% each. But we need to unpack this, right? Because we are looking at the survivors. It is very likely that there were so many micro enterprises which didn't survive, and there was a huge loss in employment. There is no data to show that. However, one thing that is quite clear is that, and we have to remember this, the micro enterprise sectors, they are the vast majority. Even in 2013, they really accounted for 92% of all enterprises. So the loss of businesses would have been substantial. But what our study shows is that, and when you look at our studies of the micro enterprises, only about 30% of them were larger than 3 employees. Most of them were really like mom and pop kind of things. So when we look at this whole, when we look at the landscape of enterprises and see the proliferation of micro enterprises, what we can understand is how policy has failed for a long time, because these enterprises have not grown and they have been vulnerable and extremely vulnerable to the shocks. Now, what are the problems that they face? In our survey, we asked, what are the constraints? And Professor Chandrasiri presented them. Number one, energy costs. And here we have to remember that cheap energy is absolutely necessary for economic growth. At a time when there was no power, it was slave labor, the number of slaves you commanded. Now, if you look at, say, the European Union, they have sanctioned themselves out of free energy, cheap energy. And now, Germany is deindustrializing. So you can understand how fundamentally important cheap energy is, and we have not had it. We didn't have it in 2004 when the ADB and the World Bank did the investment climate survey. The CEB has had a stranglehold on power generation, and the CEB has been inefficient and costly. And now we have the highest electricity tariffs in the region. The other thing I want to highlight is our economy has been subject to macroeconomic stress for a very long time because we have never been able to cut our expenditure and increase our revenue. So we have this fiscal deficit, and to cover the fiscal deficit, government has been borrowing. That has made credit very expensive for all these firms. So that's another aspect of, I would say, institutional failure. Without fixing problems like this, we really can't come out of this hole and have a process of sustainable growth in this enterprise sector. What we will have is mushrooms popping up when the rain comes and then they disappear. There won't be sustainable growth. So we need to fix the governance issues first and foremost to enable a conducive environment for MSME growth. Thank
Dr. Gunatilaka, that was very insightful and probably something that most people don't think about, really, that governance comes foremost at managing and developing and growing our MSMEs, which form the majority of our economic survival, really. So thank you for that. Professor Chandrasiri, given your analysis earlier, how did this crisis actually impact the MSMEs, and what were the coping strategies they used to survive and thrive, some of them?
Thank you, Savitri. First, the impact, in fact, we measured in terms of employment, in terms of sales turnover, also in terms of the financial obligations, plus, as I mentioned, the human capital development. With respect to the employment, there again, our data very clearly indicate that, for example, among micro-level enterprises, loss of jobs, it was around 22%. Medium-scale enterprise, small scale, it was 23%, and medium scale, it was about 21%. So that way, there has been a major loss of employment among these organizations. That's number one. Also, what we notice is that it was due to the wage factor, number one. Number two is the migration, both in migration and out migration. In addition, of course, we also measured in terms of the loss of the sales turnover. It varied from 20 to 40% across different subsectors, etc. But that has been a major loss, economic loss in terms of economic impact. In terms of coping strategies, actually, I think the study findings are very interesting because, for example, I mentioned few factors, things like the use of online sales plus use of ICT. But in addition, there were some very interesting findings. We also heard the first presentation, looking for local sources of raw material. But what I noticed was that in Kurunagala, we visited the garment manufacturer, the fabric manufacturer. They are medium-scale enterprise exporting, engaged in exporting. They do. We noticed that they do a lot of the factor substitution work. In fact, in Anuradhapura, we came across a noodles manufacturer. He is so this factor substitution, which I teach at the university, I found it's an interesting case study because they used to boil noodles using LP gas. But as we all know, in 2020, there was a severe shortage, and that was a major crisis. What they did was they immediately decided to use firewood, right? And that way, in Anuradhapura area, there is plenty of firewood. So that way, even energy sources, they look for alternative sources. In addition, for example, adjusting their product line, service line to suit the crisis situation. For example, one of the sari manufacturers, what they did was, they had a massive stock of saris because of the crisis. Then immediately they started using, using saris. They started manufacturing masks. And in fact, they went to the extent of even exporting it because they have the designers, they can come up with nice designs, etc. So in terms of service mix, product mix adjustment, factor substitution, the alternative energy sources, we came across very interesting coping mechanisms invented by micro, small scale enterprises, depending on the sector they operate. If it is food sector, it is one strategy, as opposed to government sector. Even with respect to distribution and sales, this noodles manufacturer, he said they used to depend on the standard chain supermarkets. But the issue there is that you have to wait for 3 months, and the margin is 35% or so. That's very high. That eats into your profit. But instead of depending on them, his alternative approach was that the operate through the small, medium scale the traders within a radius of 50 miles. So those people, see, it is you can collect on weekly basis, so you get immediate cash. They also don't demand a very high margin. It is 10%, 15%. You can negotiate it. If they can sell more, then even those people, he said, they were willing to offer him more discounts and more margins, etc. So that way, we noticed that in terms of factor utilization, use of raw material, sources of raw material, then product advertising, product promotion, as well as the product mix adjustment. There has been very innovative approaches, also strategies being employed by these people, and these if the necessary supports come from the institutional sector as well as macro policy reforms, I am 100% sure they would bounce back very strongly. Thank you.
So, Professor Chandrasiri, taking off from that, while these people did cope, some of them grew, some of them transformed their businesses. In your findings, what was the way forward that you would put out in the survey, in the study?
Okay, Savitri, as I mentioned, also emphasized this aspect. We need to take an overall approach, because without ignoring macroeconomic aggregates, there is no way we can fix these issues or find solution to these issues. So therefore, first thing is that we need to really address some of the fundamental macro issues. It is being addressed by the leading development partners in this country. That has to be, we need to proceed with that, number one. Number two is that we all know that the IMF released a report, diagnostic report, which goes into the detailed analysis of the governance issue, which actually captures it is a good textbook for institutional economics. Its summary is that there are major institutional failures. We need to take it seriously. We need to accept it, and then we need to move forward with some set of at least major areas of institutional reforms. Not all the institutions, because Sri Lanka is well known for having a plethora of institutions. We can't reform all those things. That would lead into all kinds of political economic factors. But the major sectors like energy, transport, these are vital sectors which affect not only MSMEs, also it affects our daily life also. So there are some vital sectors, economic sectors, where institutional reform is a must. Then finally, of course, the other one is skills development work. You notice in the data set, there has been a major loss of skills development in terms of training and development. In addition, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that when people migrate abroad, they generate most important foreign exchange earnings. But at the same time, we lose skilled and unskilled workers. So that is a major loss. Skills development work is a long-term thing. It takes a lot of time. At the very outset, in the presentation, that lady appreciated the ILO support for skills development work. In fact, they asked, your skills development work, really, you rescued them actually. So for us to rescue this economy, I would say, as a university person, skills development is the number one, and we can do it, and that should be the priority, followed by institutional reforms. Macro one is a very tough one. It is very, very difficult. We don't have enough money, etc. So priority-wise, it is skills development work, institutional reform, followed by macroeconomic fundamentals. Thank you.
And Dr. Gunatilaka, how can these findings actually be used in the way forward?
I think it provides evidence about what we have not got right. I think many of the policies that we are talking about here in the book, it's not that it's not as if we are talking about them for the first time. These have been known. It's just that the can has been kicked down the road, and then the shocks came, and now we are scrabbling around. So I think we need to develop a sort of a short list of, as Shah is fond of saying, low-hanging fruit. And even in terms of institutional reforms, you can't reform the whole sector. Just pick out key ones. And I would say the power sector is fundamental.
Thank you. So now we have 4 areas or 3 areas. One is skill development, which we need to look at. Institutional reform, but prioritizing, and maybe the energy sector is one. And then move on from there to macroeconomic fundamentals. So Shir, looking at it from a macro perspective, how can these findings be used in the way forward?
Well, I think the authors have outlined quite clearly some of the key areas. Just want to say a few things about what we've also seen globally, particularly when it comes to labour market recoveries following a crisis. And of course, crises are not all the same. We had COVID-19 was very different than the financial crisis of 2008-9, etc. But what is very clear is that these type of issues, with respect to the labour market in general, but more specifically the MSMEs, as a key vehicle for jobs in a country like Sri Lanka, cannot be left to the end of the crisis to work out what has gone wrong, right? The countries that have done well in responding to crises have actively sought to respond to that in terms of not only the macro story, but also particularly the labour market level. So whether it was the SOE reform in China, whether it was the 97-98 East Asia financial crisis in South Korea, and in fact, whether Europe, EU during the COVID-19 pandemic, very proactive changes in policies to support youth in the case of the EU. So a really important lesson there is to be active and to take this within this at the heart of the recovery efforts. And here I have to credit the government for recognizing the importance of this, and efforts and achievements have been made in terms of the road towards macroeconomic stability, as you have seen in this country. But of course, the road to recovery is long. There's no two ways about it, and the road to recovery for those MSMEs is even longer. And I think the issues that have been pointed out that need to be addressed come in this comprehensive framework that I referred to before. It's on the demand side in terms of job creation, it's on the supply side in terms of skilling, and on the institutional regulatory governance side. Now, rather than rehashing what has already been said, I would also just stress also my personal experience, working with countries around the world on the need, and Ramani pointed out this as well in terms of what's feasible. So yes, a comprehensive approach is needed, and on that we've been supporting the ministry and with our social partners on a labour market transformation and recovery strategy, and providing advice on how to go about that, bringing these findings into that vehicle. But having that comprehensive framework is complex, but the hard part is the implementation. So focusing on implementation is absolutely critical. How to ensure this is financed, and of course the IFIs that are also here in the room with us, and lots of efforts have been made in that regard, but this will need significant focus in terms of the financing of these efforts. Another key part of implementation that is challenging, we've seen around the world, is coordination. Coordination is costly. It doesn't come for free. It needs to be dealt with carefully. And I think the report also points out some areas on coordination that are leaving the MSMEs without full access to the services that they could use in terms of not only during the crisis, but also in terms of recovery and in better economic times. So, very much linked to this need to focus on implementation is getting that coordination right, but being realistic about it. It's not everyone has to be involved in order to achieve, but having the right actors and some reduction in the fragmentation that exists in the system, in the policy framework. So how to reduce that, I would suggest is a key priority. A third point I would add in terms of the general sort of need on the policy level is, of course, this is not a one-shot exercise. even in the best of times, policies are not done in one go, and you sit there and say, well, we have a policy. It requires not only the implementation I talked about, but it has to be flexible and it needs to adapt. The situation in Sri Lanka will continue to evolve. So it's absolutely critical that the policy approach and the strategy that is taken will focus and build on not only this type of evidence, but ongoing evidence and monitoring of the labour market. I mean, if you look at the labour market indicators, fascinating things are going on. I mean, unemployment rate has remained relatively low, but labour force participation has been falling. Working hours fell. Real wages are taking the brunt of it because of the huge increase in inflation. These are types of issues that would need careful labour market monitoring. But just in addition, I would just stress the importance of dialogue. Of course, the ILO with the ministry and the social partners promotes tripartite dialogue on these issues. We believe, and have seen that around the world, as a very robust mechanism to achieve consensual outcomes, but ones that are more effective. So ongoing social dialogue has been happening here in this case as well is critical. So that's the part that I would like to share on in terms of strengthening implementation, get towards an inclusive labour market recovery. And of course, the ILO, we stand ready to provide that support in any way we can, along with our development partners and others who are on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you said, there's one size does not fit all. We'll have to work out what our priorities are, what we need. And also, it's a long road to recovery, like you mentioned. And those MSMEs are in for the long road. But I'm sure with their resilience and their determination, commitment to have lasted this long, yes, they are on the road to recovery. Thank you very much to all three of you, Professor Chandrasiri, Dr. Gunadilaka, and Cher. You may step down now. Thank you. We're just waiting for the stage to be cleared because we will be launching the publication that we have been talking about all evening. So I'd like to invite Ms. Simran Singh and Minister of Labour Manusha Nanayakkara up on stage. This is a groundbreaking report on the impact of multiple crises on Sri Lanka's MSMEs. The publication will be presented to the Minister by the Country Director of the ILO, Simran Singh. And that marks the official release of this study. And while the Minister and Ms. Singh stand, we'd like to invite Dr. Sherverick, Professor Sunil Chandrasiri and Dr. Ramani Gunathilaka to join the party on stage, together with the Secretary to the Ministry of Labour and Foreign Employment, Mr. R.P.A. Vimalabila. And that done, Cher did mention about the ILO's championing of tripartism. I'd like to invite Leslie Devendra, General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Nidahas Sevaka Sangamaya, and Bajra Ellapola, Director General of the Employees Federation of Ceylon, to join the party on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, that signals the launch of this groundbreaking report, the impact of multiple crises on Sri Lanka's micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, published by the International Labour Organization in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'd like to invite the Minister of Labour to stay on stage, Minister Manusha Nanayakkara, to deliver the keynote address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Honored guests, secretaries of ministries, I think only Mr. R.P.A. Vimalabila is here. Member of the diplomatic community, distinguished representatives from the UN agencies, esteemed members from academia, respected ILO staff including Ms. Simrin Singh and Sher, valued entrepreneurs, members of the government, private sector leaders, dedicated employers, members of trade union, and hardworking individuals. It is both a privilege and a profound responsibility to stand before you at the launch of this pivotal report on the impact of multiple crises on the micro, small, and medium enterprises, the backbone of Sri Lanka's economy. Our country, like many others, has faced its share of challenges. Yes, as I address you today, I am filled with hope and determination. I hope because I see the people who will drive our nation's recovery and transformation is in this room. Determination, because the strategies we lay out will drive our shared prosperity. The Labour Market Recovery and Transformation Strategy, LMRTS, that we are developing in collaboration with the International Labour Organization and our tripartite partners, is not just a set of recommendations. It is a blueprint for action, a manifesto for change the places, jobs at the heart of our inclusive economic recovery. We aim to tackle the fundamental issues highlighted in the study on the impact of multiple crises on micro, small, and medium enterprises, the backbone of Sri Lanka's economy, through the followings. Number one, creating jobs through resilient businesses. We recognize the entrepreneurial spirit that thrive within our MSMEs, like that batik lady. Our strategy is tailored on nurture the spirit, ensuring businesses are surviving and expanding. We must support these enterprises, enhance their resilience, and enable them to be the engine of job creation that our economy needs. Number two, upgrading skills and improving job matching. A workforce with the right skills is a foundation of any robust economy. We are committed to enhancing the skill set of our workforce and ensuring these skills meet the need of the transforming labor market. Better job matching and career progression path will be at the forefront of our agenda. Number three, institutional reforms for the better service delivery. To facilitate this transformation, we must restructure our institutions to be more coordinated, capable, and agile. By reducing energy cost, enhancing social protection, and streamlining legislative processes, we will create a more conducive environment for business to flourish. The report also rightly emphasizes supporting vulnerable segments, including women, youth, and workers affected by SOE reforms. Initiatives such as income support, retraining, and improved job placement services are integral to the inclusive approach. Furthermore, our ministry has proactively initiated reforms in the labor sector. Our commitment to revising outdated labor laws reflects our dedication to fostering more equitable and supportive environment for all workers. Initiatives like unemployment insurance, government-funded maternity leave, and social security for formal and informal sector workers mark significant progress. Developing a national labor market information system is a testament to our dedication to making informed, data-driven decisions that will serve the country in the long run. Let this moment be a turning point. As we unveil the implement the LMRTS, we are not merely responsible to the crisis. We are seizing an opportunity to build our robust, equitable labor market that honors every worker's dignity and potential of every entrepreneur. Our path ahead will be challenging, yes, but we will emerge more sustainable. Substantiation will be the collective effect of the government, business, trade unions, and the international community. Let us embrace the entrepreneurial spirit, the drive, and the innovation inherent in our MSMEs as the cornerstone of our nation's resilience and growth. To the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the workers, the dreams, our future is bright. The resolve is firm, and our journey is forward. Thank you all, and a special note of gratitude to ILO and the team behind this report and the event today for the unwavering support in our endeavors. Thank you so much. රට බොහොම අමාරුවේ වැටිලා තිබිච්ච වෙලාවක කර්මාන්ත සියල්ල කඩාගෙන වැටෙද්දි විදුලිය, ජලය, ගෑස් සියල්ල නැති වෙලා කර්මාන්ත කඩාගෙන වැටෙන අවස්ථාවකදී පිටරටවල් වලින් එන අපිට එන ඇනවුම් නොලැබී යන අවස්ථාවකදී ලෝකයේ පැවති ආර්ථික තත්ත්වයක් එවැගේම කොරෝනා පැන්ඩමික් වදුරු නිසා තත්ත්වය හමුවේ අපේ කුඩා හා මධ්‍යම පරිමාණ කර්මාන්ත කඩාගෙන වැටෙද්දී ජනාධිපතිතුමා මට නියෝගයක් දුන්නා මේ සම්බන්ධව කළ හැකි දේ කළ යුතු දේ කුමක්ද කියා හොයා බලන යනුව තමයි අපි ILO ආයතනයේ නිල්ලීම කළේ මේ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය සමීක්ෂණය වාර්තාවක් සකස් කරලා අපිට දෙන්න කල යුත්තේ මොකක්ද කියලා රාජ්‍යයට අවශ්‍ය අදහස් ලබා ගැනීමට. ඒ අනුව අද මේ ලබා දීපු අදහස් සමග මේ යෝජනා සමග නිකන් වාර්තාවක් බවට පත් කරලා කවුරු හරි කිව්වා වගේ මට මතක නැහැ. තවත් ලස්සනට තියෙන ෂෙල්ෆ් එකේ තියෙන රිසර්ච් බුක් එකක් නොවි මේක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න අපි රජයේ විදියට කැප වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මේ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය අනෙකුත් සහාය ආයතනත් සම්බන්ධ කරගෙන වැඩ කරනවා. හඳුනාගත්තු ප්‍රධාන කාරණාවන් 3ක් විදියට මේ ආයතන රීස්ට්‍රක්චර් කරගන්න එක, එනර්ජි කොස්ට් එක අඩු කරන මේ වගේ දේවල් සම්බන්ධයෙන් අද තර්කයක් මතුවෙච්ච අවස්ථාවක්. අපේ ප්‍රොෆෙසර් චන්ද්‍රසිරිගේ ගැටලු වල මූලිකම ගැටලු 3 ස්ලයිඩ් එකේ තිබිච්ච දැන් විසඳලා ඉවරයි. ඒ වෙලාවේ විදුලිය තිබුණේ නැහැ රස්සාව කර්මාන්ත දුවන්න. අද විදුලිය තියෙනවා. එදා ඉන්ධන තිබුණේ නැහැ කර්මාන්ත කරගෙන යන්න. අද ඉන්ධන තියෙනවා. තවත් එක් කාරණාවක්. ඒ වෙලාවේ තිබිච්ච ගැටලුකාරී තත්ත්වය එදා තිබුණේ නැහැ. අද තියෙනවා. හැබැයි තිබිච්ච අවිශ්වාසය, පොලිසිස් පිළිබඳව තියෙන දීර්ඝකාලීනව පැවැත්ම වගේ දේවල් තවමත් තියෙනවා. මොකද කොයි විදියට මේවා වෙනස් කරන්න තියෙන පොලිටිකල් මෝටිවේටඩ් දේශපාලන උවමනා මත සිද්ධ කරන ඇතැම් අවශ්‍යතාවයන් එක්ක මේ රිකවරි එක කොයි විදියට අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවද කියන කාරණාව. නමුත් අපි යම් තැනකට අද ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නවා. ඒක ඉස්සරහට අරගෙන යන්න අපිට තෙල්, ගෑස්, අනෙකුත් මූලික දේවල් රට ඇතුලේ තියෙන තත්ත්වයක් අද තියෙද්දි අපේ බහුතරයක් නැවත වතාවක් අපේ බතික් කර්මාන්තයේ යෙදුණු තරුණිය නැවත ගොඩ නැගුණා වගේ. ඒක ක්‍රයිසිස් එක තමන්ට ආශිර්වාදයක් කරගෙන ගොඩ නැගුණා වගේ බොහෝ අය අද ගොඩ නැගීමෙන් තියෙනවා මේ සියල්ලත් එක්ක. ඒ වගේ ගොඩ නැගෙන සියලු දෙනාට අපි ශක්තියක් ලබා දෙන්නට ඕනි. ඒ සඳහා අපි හැම පැත්තකින්ම උදව් කරනවා. තිවිච්ච ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් කොස්ට් එක වැඩි කියලා තිවිච්ච එක. ආර්ථිකයට තිවිච්ච වැඩි මුදල් අමාරුව දැන් පොලි අනුපාතය අඩු කිරීමත් සමග දැන් බොහෝ සුළු හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ කර්මාන්තවලට ණය ලබා ගැනීමේ හැකියාව ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ADB ආයතනය අපිට ලබා දෙන සුළු හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ කර්මාන්තකරුවන්ට ලබා දෙන ණය මුදල් සහ ආධාර සමගත් අපට තවත් මේ අයට ශක්තිමත් කරන්නත් පුළුවන්කම ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේ සියලු වෙනස්කම් සමග මේ අරගෙන තියෙන පියවරයන් එක්ක අපිට මේ ස්ට්‍රැටජි එක යථාර්ථයක් බවට පත් කරගෙන අපේ අයව ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්න අපේ කර්මාන්ත ගොඩනගා ගන්න අපිට පුළුවන් වේවි. අපි හැමදාම කතා කරන කාන්තාවන්ට අවශ්‍ය කරන හැමදාම කතා කරන කාන්තාව අපේ වැඩියෙන්ම ඉගෙනගත්තු කාන්තාව, වැඩියෙන්ම අධ්‍යාපනය ලැබපු කාන්තාව වර්ක් ෆෝස් එකේ අඩුයි. හැබැයි අද මේ වාර්තාවෙන් පස්සේ මම දැනගත්තා සුළු හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ කර්මාන්තවල වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් යෙදිලා ඉන්නේ අපේ කාන්තාව. එහෙනම් කාන්තාවන් තව සවිගාල ගන්නවලා ඒ අයව සුළු හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණ කර්මාන්තවලින් රටේ ආර්ථිකයට ශක්තියක් කරගන්නත් අපි කල්පනා කළ යුතු වෙනවා කියන එක අපි වැඩ කටයුතු කරනවා. බොහොමත්ම ස්තුතියි සියලු දෙනාට.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for the keynote address. Like you said, this is a blueprint for the future and a manifesto for change. That's what we've been seeing, and I do hope the findings will be taken further and be fruitful at the end of the day. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We will be putting up a QR code on the screens as well as they are on the pennants around the room if you'd like to download a copy of the report that was launched today. Plus, as you're leaving, you may like to take an executive summary of that, and that is also available at the table. Have a good evening. Please do join us for refreshments as we move along, and do take note of the findings and the way forward for Sri Lanka. Thank you.